Please welcome our guest orator, Mr. Noel Hodgson.
A bit smaller than the end, so we'll try and lower it down. Is that okay? My lords, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, good afternoon. I remember once being here years ago, standing on this very hill with a large group of school children from Wooler. We were accompanied by a school's inspector who decided to join us on the outing. Naturally, I was anxious that the visit went well and met with his approval. When we entered the field near the farmhouse, blocking our way were cows and calves. Wittingly, I asked young Campbell from Thrunton to step forward and tell us all what we should do. As hoped, he advised us to skirt round the animals so that we'd avoid walking between any cow and calf. We did so and gathered safely on the brow of the hill beyond the herd, somewhere over there, where I began to describe how both armies had lined up before battle in their divisions and how the fighting commenced. To emphasize the number of soldiers involved, I compared it to a full St. James's Park at Newcastle, holding just over 52,000 fans. Imagine that. Anyhow, all seemed to be going well, when I noticed many of the students nudging each other and heads starting to turn. I looked up, and to my dismay, there on the skyline in all its glory, a bull had mounted a cow. Round here. I glanced at the inspector, who was leaden-faced. Right, I announced hurriedly. That is this afternoon's biology lesson. Follow me. And I proceeded at once to lead them downhill, leaving the amorous couple out of sight. On the bus back to Wooler, the inspector was very busy writing notes, and later he informed me that he considered the outing was a valuable educational experience. Wow. He also added that I had handled the distraction very well, and I'd said the right thing. Well, here, right now, almost at the same place, I trust I may once again say the right thing. So let's start off positively by expressing a sincere thank you to the presenting Coldstream Association for their wonderful organization of this annual visit. It is unquestionably the most impressive show of yearly remembrance to those who fought here at Flodden over 500 years ago. The ride out from Coldstream is both symbolic and spectacular, a fitting and poignant tribute to our border history and to the soldiers from both sides whose courage and sacrifice is today both praised and lamented. Of course, our own individual journeys here today began not at Coldstream where we gathered, but from our own homes that we left earlier in anticipation of the day ahead. And it makes me think of the soldiers at Flodden who left their homes to venture to this place from all over Scotland and England's northern counties. Most of them conscripted common men who had likely never travelled further than the next village or the next town. We may ask ourselves, what filled their thoughts and hearts? Clearly the sorrow of farewell to family and friends. Surely the nervous excitement of an adventure and a challenge, the like of which they'd never faced before. Without doubt, coerced by their superiors, there'd be a sense of valor and honor, fighting for their king and country. And as their journey lengthened, buoyed by increasing numbers at mustering points like Edinburgh, Elm Kirk, Coldstream, and on the other side, York, Durham, Newcastle, Alnwick, their belief and confidence would have been bolstered. Yet despite these aspects, the reality of war would loom larger as their travel brought them closer to the enemy. the English eventually camping at Wooler and the Scots on Flodden Hill, a mile and a quarter from here. For the novice and inexperienced soldiers, anxiety and trepidation would by now be breathing heavily upon them, and their spirits be noticeably weakened by the fatigue and misery from the long march, with their clothing and bedding dampened from rain-soaked days and nights. Yet, despite the fears and gloom and some desertion, both armies endured and boldly prepared themselves for an imminent encounter. Now, I have never been a soldier and can only imagine the faith and the motivation and courage both sides needed to complete their final journeys, to confront the other. The Earl of Surrey's English marching via Barmoor to cross the River Till, and King James's army departing Flodden Hill to move across here to Branxton Moor in order to block the enemy's northern approach. We can read about the battle. We can learn of the fortune and misfortune of the ranks as the conflict unfolded. But it's only here on the field itself that we can truly sense and envisage the events of that fateful collision. It's only here at the place that we can wonder and imagine the dreadful action in all its fury and its horror. Of course, the ground was different then. Agriculture has groomed and drained what was rough moorland into pasture and arable land. But the contours remain the same. The line of the hills, the gradient of the slopes, and the gully between them, all of which give us an insight into the stages of battle and a better understanding of it. Over there, where the slope is gentler and the hollow shallower, was where Home and Huntley's troops advanced, their progress relatively unhindered on more even ground as they swept towards the English right, their 18-foot pikes overwhelming the enemy, and how a total rout was prevented by Dacre's cavalry, including Bastard Heron, riding to the rescue like in a Western film. And here, where the rapid advance of the Scottish division under the Earls Crawford, Errol and Montrose was disabled by a steeper drop and a wider muddy stream, and then, having traversed the boggy ground, they were unable to accelerate their pike attack upslope against Thomas Howard's professional soldiers, whose resistance forced the Scots to a standstill and to cast aside their long spears and fight on with swords and weapons that were unmatched against the English bill. Way over there, we can picture King James in all his splendor, ringed by banners and nobility sworn to protect him, making his way warily on foot down the steep bank. Here again, the marshy dips slowed their progress, followed by the resolute resistance of Yorkshiremen above them at the fore of Surrey's division, whose defensive lines were bent and buckled, but never broken. Where once again, slowed down, the Scotsmen's pikes were rendered useless, and the lethal bill, cutting and stabbing, scythed down valorous men like standing corn, including their leader. Way across to our right, on the eastern side of the hill, we can also imagine the unopposed Highlanders under Lennox and Argyll, perched on high, dangling like puppets in the rain and wind, waiting for orders that never arrived. While Stanley's English force, out of sight, approached them from Crookham Dean to ambush and assault them from behind. Yes, it's only here on the battleground, with an awareness and a perception that we can properly appreciate the battle's wrath and the brutality and its pitiful scenes of destruction and carnage. Both Catholic armies believed God was on their side. What ensued was not godly, but the work of the devil. The din of medieval war would have been shocking. After the initial explosions of cannon fire that must have terrorized the ranks, the roaring and screeching of men in hand-to-hand fighting would be awe-inspiring. Very few would die instantly. Soldiers struck down, screaming in agony, men staring with anguish, clutching their wounds, pleading for mercy, wailing for help from fathers, brothers, sons, friends, while other dying victims lay sobbing, moaning and groaning in pain, and some, without a sound, empty-faced, drawn towards the deepest silence of all, their journey's end. In contact with the ground upon which such images are conjured enabled me to write of the battle in poetry and fiction. In my novel Heron's Flight, alongside the action, I also sought a spirit of reconciliation, an ethos which is evident too in our meeting here today. The dead were heaped into pits. For every English corpse there were at least 3 Scots, enemies in life, united in death. They lay together undivided, their pale, feeble-looking bodies stripped and silent. Once buried, they were hidden forever, lost to everything meaningful in life and to everyone who knew them, save in memory. Save in memory. Flodden evokes in us many emotions. In hindsight, it is easy to judge its futility, its waste, its loss. But the aura of tragedy remains, etched in the soul of our land's heritage. The monument on Piper's Hill is a lasting and solemn memorial to the brave of both nations. Likewise, this annual ride is a powerful testimony of remembrance, an act of pilgrimage and homage to Flodden's unique and unforgettable story. Returning home, after a meeting in March with organisers Ian and Fiona, to discuss this day's proceedings, I chanced to read a newspaper article regarding the German Airbus that had recently crashed into the French Alps, killing all 150 passengers and crew on board. At the scene of the disaster, the mayor of Le Vernet, the nearest village to the crash site, was quoted as saying that, "From now on, we shall be the guardians of this place and of the memory of those whose lives were ended here. From now on, we shall be the guardians of this place and of the memory of those whose lives were ended here." And it occurred to me that this is exactly what our visit today heralds. In this ceremonial journey to the field each year, Coldstream has indeed become a true guardian of Flodden and of the memory of those whose lives were ended here. For this act of service, you Coldstream deserve further recognition. And I, a Northumbrian, salute you with praise. Now, with a glance at my invisible watch, I shall end on that affirmative note, trusting that I have said, as the inspector commented, the right thing.